Good morning, my friends. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story that made my blood run cold. That's a beautiful idiom. And through the process of the story, I'm probably going to try to teach you some English as well. I just recently spent a couple of days up in the bush, in the mountains, in the wilderness of Canada. And it reminded me of an incident that happened maybe about 12 months ago, actually. About 1 year ago at this time it happened. And, there's often this question people ask. If you're in the mountains, or if you're in a forest alone, would you rather meet a man, or would you rather meet a bear? Depending on who you ask, the answer is going to change. For me, I'm on the fence. I'm 6'1", 220 pounds. I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm strong. I believe I can take care of myself. But not everyone is like that. And if you ask any woman that question, she's probably going to say a bear. Every woman I know has said they'd rather meet a bear in the woods or the mountains than a man. Prior to this, I guess I would have always said a man, but this incident that I'm going to tell you about got me thinking that maybe it would be safer for me to meet a bear. So grab yourself a coffee, a drink, whatever it is, and just listen to the story of the time when my blood went cold. So like I said, this happened about a year ago. My wife and I were driving up a Forest Service road. A Forest Service road. A Forest Service road is a road in the mountains in Canada. Now, logging is quite popular in Canada. Logging. And logging is when people cut down trees. They fell trees. Did you know fell is a verb in the present tense? F-E-L-L. No, not fall, fell. And so these people fell trees for a living. And in order to get to the area of a forest, they take the Forest Service Road. Now, we have some friends that live on top of a mountain that live on a Forest Service Road. A road high up in the mountains, in wilderness. A road where you have no neighbors. My friends live in a cabin, and their nearest neighbor could be 10, 15 kilometers away, so they're pretty isolated. I love going up there. Now, in winter, a Forest Service road is usually covered in snow or ice, and, you need to be prepared for the wilderness. You need to be prepared for everything when you're on a Forest Service road. Like, if you break down on a Forest Service road, which I'm going to call FSR, because that's just what we say in Canada, FSR. So if you break down on an FSR, nobody's coming for you unless you call somebody. Maybe someone else will come by, maybe, but there's no guarantee. And like a lot of Canadians spend their time on FSRs because it's remote, you're in the wild, you can have a big fire, you can have a bush party, for example. There's lots of reasons to be on an FSR. But in winter, you need to have a good car. You need to have 4x4. You probably need to have chains on your car. Chains are, quite literally chains that you wrap around the wheel to give yourself more traction when you're driving in snow. So, my wife and I are driving up an FSR to go visit a friend. And because the winter was mild, we didn't need to chain up for quite a while. and we're driving up the road with no chains on, maybe a little bit of mud, a little bit of snow, nothing that the car can't handle. It was fine. And then we were getting to a point where the snow was starting to build up because we're climbing, we're getting more altitude. And every corner we go, there's more ice, there's more snow. And, we're thinking to ourselves, okay, we're going to have to pull over in a moment and chain up. Which is fine, we do it all the time. Putting chains on the car is easy for us. It wasn't always easy. It used to be a bitch to do, but now it's not a problem. We turn a corner where we think we're going to have to chain up. And yeah, there's a bunch of snow, so we can't really go any further. But at the one area where we're going to chain up, there's a car stuck in the snow. Now it's to the side, so that's good because it's not blocking the road. That's always an issue on these FSRs. If a car breaks down, it might block the entire road, which is a problem. But here's the thing, the car we saw did not belong on a Forest Service road. The car we saw was very low down. The car we saw was not four-wheel drive, and it did not have chains. So whoever drove the car on an FSR in winter, well, they really shouldn't have, because that car is not designed for FSRs, or is it designed for winter driving? As it happened, the driver was there. And this is where things get a little interesting, I would say. We're driving up. We see the car. We have to stop because we cannot continue. And there's a gentleman standing there by himself, kitted out in winter gear. He had a rucksack, like a backpack. I call it a rucksack. Canadians call it a backpack, like a big bag for camping or hiking or something. And here's the thing. When you meet somebody on an FSR, it's common etiquette to say hello, common etiquette to talk to them, common etiquette just to make sure they're doing okay. Because it could be you next time. It could be you who's stuck. And I mean, this car was going nowhere. This car was in a snowbank. So I figured this guy's going to need some help of some sort. I roll down the window and I just say, "Hey, bud, you doing okay?" And he just says, "No," in a very long, elongated voice. No. It was at that moment that I felt this was going to not be an easy one. I then ask him, "What's going on?" And he says, "Are you fucking serious?" So he swore immediately. And that did raise a red flag almost. The alarm bells were kind of ringing at this stage. And he then apologized, which was nice. And I just said, "Okay, well, my wife and I are going to put chains on, so give me a second." Now remember, I can't go any further. I can't drive forward. And to be honest, reversing where I was not too easy. So I pulled the car over. And we're about 10 feet away from him at this stage. Now I reversed. I did reverse back a little bit, but in order to do like a turn, it would have been like a 12-point turn or something like that. So it wouldn't have been easy to turn the car. Can't keep going because there's too much snow and ice up ahead without chains. Now, thankfully, my wife is quite competent at putting chains on because it's something that we do a lot. So we get out of the car. I walk over to him and have a little chat. And we get talking. He's not doing so well, this guy. We just shoot the breeze a little bit. He asked me my name. I said Ronan. I asked him his name. He told me. And we're just talking. And then I just notice something over his shoulder. It was a rifle case. A rifle case. So in Canada, guns are legal. You can buy guns if you have a license. It's not like the States where you can just buy a gun anywhere. There's lots of strict rules. And this guy had a gun case or a gun bag. So he had a bag over his shoulder that is designed for carrying a gun. That got me worried. That got me concerned. There's absolutely no reason to have a gun at this time of year. There's nothing to hunt. You're not hunting in January, February, or March. There's no animals to kill. There's no big game. So why would you have a rifle up in the mountains at this time of year? Now, I didn't say anything, but I spied it with my eye. And of course, I play it cool. I put on my best poker face. Poker face. There's a good one. Poker face is when you do not show somebody what you're thinking with your facial expression. It comes from the game poker, where you need to maybe trick people into thinking you have a good card, or people into thinking you have a bad card. And your face tells a lot. And if you have a poker face, you're not giving any ideas as to what you're thinking with your facial expression. Kind of like deadpan. And I just tell him, okay, give me a second. I'll be right back. And I walk over to my wife. Now, she's at the trunk of the car, the boot of the car. I call it the boot. Canadians call it the trunk. We have a box with all the chains. And I go over to her, and the gentleman is over by his vehicle talking to himself. Another red flag. My wife and I have a very quick discussion. And I'm like, this guy's not well. This guy's having problems. I think he has a gun, is what I say to my wife. Now, in the back of the car, there's a hatchet. There's like a bat. There's some other things that could be used as a weapon, but you don't want to take it out. You don't want to brandish one of those, because as soon as you show something like that, you're escalating the situation. But what else can I do? It was at this moment that he started walking over to the car. And my wife said, oh, he's coming over. So I walk over to him to keep him away from our car. And I get talking to him again. So I walked over. I'm like, oh, hey, what's that over there? Or something like that, And, we kind of moved away from the car. So at this stage, my wife has the chains out and she's chaining up the wheels. Because with the chains, we can drive. Without the chains, we're stuck where we are. It was at this moment when he starts opening up to me. And it's really sad because he was going through something very, very bad. He was having a mental health crisis. He was having a bit of a breakdown, to be honest. He starts telling me about all the bad things that have happened to him. About how he has addiction. He's addicted to drugs. He has family issues. I told him I'm from Ireland. He told me about his family from Scotland. And he spoke about his father a bit. He had a rough upbringing. A rough upbringing. Upbringing is how you're raised. Now, my name is Ronan, and I had a fantastic upbringing. I have 2 parents who love me. I have 2 siblings who love me. There was always food in my fridge. My parents were very supportive of me. My house was always warm. I had a very good upbringing. But this guy, he didn't. And he had issues. Now, like I said, he was kitted out in winter gear. So he had good winter boots, good winter pants, everything like that. And we're just chatting, and he's telling me his plan is to go into the forest to get clean. Get clean. Now, there is a collocation, to get clean. If a person is on drugs, if a person is addicted to drugs, the process of coming off those is called getting clean. So if a person wants to get clean, they need to avoid using drugs. What happens when you stop taking drugs? You go through withdrawals. Now, withdrawals are the process of your body cleansing itself and your body getting rid of drugs. And we'll talk a little bit about that further on in the story because it is relevant. So this guy is telling me he's had drug issues. He wants to get clean. He wants to get sober. S-O-B-E-R. Sober means you're not affected by drugs. Sober means you're not drinking. You're not taking, you don't drink alcohol. You don't get high. You don't take any drugs to feel different. You're sober. You're clean. And that's what he wants to be. But in order to do that, his plan was to go into the bush and live there for an extended period of time where there are no drugs. Kind of like rehab. Generally, people go to rehab if they want to get clean. If they have drug issues, if they have dependency issues or addiction issues, you generally go to rehab. And in rehab, you go to therapy and you learn techniques and you get support and you have a community of people to help you get clean. But this guy was planning to just walk into the forest, set up camp, hunt, as he said, and get clean. Maybe it would work. However, it's winter in Canada, in the mountains. At this particular time of year, it was about -10 to -20. That's cold. That's freezing. That is absolutely brutal. Honestly, camping in that weather is not a good idea. You could die. You could actually die in that temperature. If you don't stay warm enough, you could get hypothermic. You could get hypothermia. Have you ever had hypothermia? Have you ever seen a person who was hypothermic? It's not cool and it's very dangerous. Like I said, people die in that situation. He spoke about how he was going to go fishing. But here's the thing, any lake up in the mountains is frozen solid. The ice could be 2 foot thick. And he didn't have a he didn't have an auger. An auger. An auger is a device that is used to put a hole in ice. You might have seen them on TV or something, but you kind of put it on the ice and you turn it, and it's like a drill or a screw, and it goes into the ice, and you can get a hole, and then you can go ice fishing. But he didn't have one of those, and without one of those, it's going to be incredibly difficult to fish. So there's a lot of issues with this guy's plan. The temperature was dropping. It was a cold snap. Everywhere is covered in snow. There's no game. G-A-M-E. Game is like wild animals. Because it's winter, all the wild animals are gone. They're either hibernating, they've moved away, they're not very active in winter, and if there are any, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find. So his plan has many holes in it. And he's up here by himself, telling me he wants to get clean. Now remember, at this time, my wife is putting the chains on the car, and it's just me and him talking. How would you feel in that situation? Would you like to be in that situation? Would you like to be up in the mountains? Like, I wasn't by myself, but I was with my wife, and it's like, I don't want her to be here. I'd rather be by myself, because if something goes down, I'd rather her not to be involved in any way at all. If something goes down. Go down. What do you think that means? Obviously, if something goes down in this situation means if it gets violent. If the situation goes south. When a situation goes south, it goes bad. It goes down, because south is down, north is up. And I was really hoping this situation would not go south. He's talking to me. He's opening up to me. And I feel really, really bad for this guy. He's clearly going through a lot of shit. To go through a lot of shit. Poor bastard. He's telling me about his ex. He's telling me about his relationship with his father. And then he tells me the car isn't his. He borrowed the car from his ex-girlfriend. Now, I don't know about you, but generally speaking, an ex does not loan a car to an ex. An ex is usually finished with the relationship, right? He later told me that he didn't borrow the car, but he stole the car from his ex. So now, we're up in the mountains. The car I'm driving can't go until we have chains. His car is stuck in the snowbank. His car is stolen. He is trying to get clean, get off drugs, and his plan is to go live in the forest or live in the bush until that happens. Right. This is sketchy. This is very sketchy. Now, I don't know if you've ever been around anyone on drugs, but they're unpredictable. Have you ever seen Breaking Bad, the TV show? I mean, a lot of people have. It's quite popular. If you haven't, for shame, you should. But if you have, you'll know that people on drugs are unpredictable, dangerous, and as Gustavo Frings says, never trust an addict. That's one of his phrases. Never trust an addict. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but at this moment in time, that's what I was thinking. Can I trust this guy? Am I safe up here? And he has a gun. Well, he has a bag that is designed for a gun. I don't know exactly what's in it, but you need to presume that there's a gun in there. It's kind of like how whenever you see a gun, you automatically assume, believe that it's fully loaded and ready to fire. That's just like a rule of thumb. Rule of thumb. And in this case here, as soon as I see a bag designed for a gun, I'm assuming this guy has a rifle. He tells me about his ex. He tells me about all the issues he's had. And he starts apologizing to me. And I'm just saying, dude, don't apologize. It's okay. He tells me how he's homeless. He tells me how he's been kicked out of his house. He lost his job. How he can't get a break. He then starts complaining about immigrants, which has nothing to do with his problem, but he just brings it up time and time again. And I honestly just agreed with him. You know, I wasn't going to escalate the situation. If anything, I want to de-escalate the situation. And so he's then telling me about his ex-partner, and how she's going to be looking for the car. He gives me her phone number. He tells me her name, and he asks me to call her, and he asks me to let her know where her car is. So I take out my phone. We try to call her, but it just rings out. Nobody answers. Ring out. And he then asks me for a favor. And he says, can you take the keys to the car? And I mean, I think it's peculiar, but I say, sure, I'll take the keys. So he gives me the keys to the car. He then asks me for another favor, not to call the police. To which I say, of course, I will not call the police. He picks up his bag, his big rucksack, he puts it on. He picks up the rifle bag, and he says, okay, I'm going to go into the bush. I'm going to go into the forest. Now, I know this road that he's on, and I know there's a lake not too far down, maybe about 4 kilometers. You know, you could walk to the lake that I'm thinking of, and I presume that's where he's going to go. But I just have this real bad feeling. I have this real bad feeling in my gut that he is not going to come back. So before he goes off, I run back to the car and I grab my wallet and I take a 20 out. $20 bill. And I go up to him and I'm like, hey buddy, take this. And I give him the money. And I say, go get yourself a hot meal in town. Go get yourself a hot meal in town. Now the reason I did that was I wanted him to have some sort of hope for the future. You know, it's clear that he's going through a lot of shit. It's clear that he's had a rough life. And to be honest, in my opinion, when a person is doing what he's doing, I don't know if they're going to make it out. I don't know if getting clean is the ultimate goal. Maybe the ultimate goal is to not be here much longer. And my hope was that he would take the 20 and it would give him motivation to go on, motivation to continue, motivation to go back into town to get a hot meal. That was my hope with that $20. I knew I would never get it back. Couldn't care less about the 20. So he walks off into the bush. Now remember, one of the last things I said was that I will not call the police. So as soon as he left, I called the fucking police. Now I didn't call 911, but I called a non-emergency line for the local police station. Because it's not really a full emergency yet. And I get through to the police and I talk to them and I explain the whole situation. There's a guy up in the woods. He's going through something. He's having a crisis. He stole a car. It's up here. I give the partner's name. I give his name because he told me his name, which I'm not going to say here. And myself and my wife, because she got the chains on the car, we drive up the mountain. Okay, that's good. Now we get to the top of the mountain and we meet our friends and, you know, we're sitting down having a good laugh. We're all chatting and everything like that. And then my friend points out to the fact that, you know, Ronan, despite everything that's going on and that you did all the right things, you are in possession of keys to a stolen car. That's something I didn't consider. That's something that never crossed my mind. As soon as he gave me the keys to the car, I had taken a stolen item. An item that somebody was probably looking for. Kind of made me laugh a little bit. But, you know, I figured that, hey, look, if something happens, it's okay. I can talk to the police. It's fine. About, I would say, 2 hours later, the police actually do arrive, which was nice. And, you know, we're all sitting outside by a campfire and we just see the flashing blue lights. And I'm like, oh, they actually came all the way up here. I go out to greet the police officer and he tells me that, you know, he has a body cam on. And like he drove up in a police cruiser. A cruiser. 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 A police cruiser is like an SUV. You know the big police cars that you see, but it's not a police car. It's one of the bigger ones that can hold more people, more equipment, and can drive up mountain roads. And the police officer and I have a discussion. We talk about everything. I give him the keys to the stolen vehicle. And he asks me what I believe the gentleman's intentions are. And I had to think for a second. But I said, whatever they are, I don't think they're good. And I don't think anyone in the right mind is going to go camping this weekend. Because this weekend was a cold snap. It was going to get really cold. I explained how he didn't have enough food with him. How he didn't have an auger to break through the ice. How he had a rifle case, which I presume had a rifle inside of it. And how he told me he was planning to get clean. Now here's the thing. The car was never reported stolen. So the police kind of have their hands tied where they can't really do much. They could try to do an intervention, as it's called, intervention, which is where they would find you, talk to you, and see if you're okay. But at this moment, no crime has been officially committed because the car was not reported stolen. I tell the police officer that nobody is doing what he does for good, you know, for good reasons or for health or anything. That he's trying to get clean and it's not going to go well for him. And the police officer agreed. The police officer said he'll try check it out. Now, one thing I didn't tell you at the start was the area where I pulled over was like a fork in the road, a fork. And a fork in the road is where the road splits into. And I took a right, and this guy took a left. And when you go left, like I said, there's a lake about 4 kilometers away. So the police officer goes back down. He thanks me and everything like that, gives me his card. He's a cool dude. No issues. And I go back to my friends by the fire. We're just chilling, having a few drinks or something. And we all get ready to go to bed. Now, I'm staying in a cabin up in the mountains. And this is another thing that made me a little concerned, is that these are the only cabins in the area. So my friends own a resort. And in the winter, there's a bunch of empty cabins. Now, if you were trying to get clean, would you prefer to be in the wild, or would you prefer to be in a remote cabin with a stove that you could potentially keep warm? Me, I'd go for the latter. I wouldn't go for the former, I would go for the latter. I would go for the warm cabin rather than staying outside in the bush in -20. Which got me, my wife, and my buddies thinking, we better lock the door to our cabin and be prepared for a visitor just in case this guy comes up this way. Because we're not too far from him. He's only down the road. And if he's in the area, and if he is as bad as he says he is, it could be kind of sketch. Do you get me? Like, what's to stop him from coming up to us? And here's the other thing that I really want you to think about. If you have a problem in a city, there's pedestrians, there's bystanders. If you have a problem on a highway, cars are driving by. But if you have a problem in the bush, nobody is coming to help you. Sure, you can call for help, you can call police, you can call your buddies, but they will not make it in time. So you are completely isolated and you are alone. You are by yourself, and you must be ready to take care of yourself, protect yourself if needs be. That night, we slept, but maybe not as well as we could have, because all I was thinking is he's going to come up here. And if he's going through withdrawals and he's coming up here, there could be a problem. Anyways, fast forward, sun rises. We're all okay. Nothing happened. I look around the cabin, I don't see any footprints in the snow. He didn't come up. That's good. But because I am who I am, I'm an early bird, I was awake before everybody else. And curiosity got the better of me. That's a beautiful phrase. Curiosity got the better of me. And I did something perhaps foolish. I went for a walk. And to make it more foolish, I didn't tell anyone I was going for a walk. I just went by myself. I went for a walk down to where I met the man. It was only about a 3 or 4 kilometer walk, so it didn't take very long. I had a coffee in my hand and stuff like that. And the sun was rising, so it was a beautiful day. The sun was out, it was blue skies and everything like that. It was cold. Very, very cold. It was freezing. And I walked down to where the car is in the snow. And I can see the tire tracks of the RCMP, like the police vehicle. And I see footprints in the snow. Just one set. I don't believe the police officer went to look for him, which did kind of piss me off. But the police officer was by himself. So another thing is, like I said before, you're by yourself, you got to be careful. Doesn't matter if you're police or not. Anyways, for some foolish, stupid reason, I decide to follow the footprints. Yep. I don't know why. Like I said, curiosity got the better of me. And that just means that, you shouldn't be doing something, but you're curious. You want to know more, right? Even if it's not safe, your curiosity is piqued and you really want to find out what's going on. So I'm following the footprints in the snow and I feel like a tracker. I feel so badass at this time. And I got all my warm clothes on. I have a coffee in my little mug. Like it's a travel mug, so the coffee's still warm. And I'm walking. And then I hear something. And this is where my blood went cold. I heard the loudest scream I've ever heard in my life. I heard the scream of a person in severe pain and distress. Now I want you to think about the loudest and most horrific scream you've ever fucking heard. And that's what I heard. Think about someone who just receives the worst news and they wail. W-A-I-L, to wail. I heard a wail from the forest. I heard a scream from the forest. I heard a man screaming at the top of his lungs in the forest. And I wish I could recreate it right now, but I am in my apartment. And I'm afraid if I were to scream even a quarter as loud as he did, you'd be deaf if you have earphones in. But this was a scream of pain. This was a scream of agony. And as soon as I heard that scream, I stopped cold. As soon as I heard that scream, my blood ran cold. My blood went cold. What does that mean? That means you're fucking frightened. That means you know something bad is going on. When your blood runs cold, you feel tense, scared, like something really bad, something really ominous is about to happen. You don't know exactly what, but it's bad. And this scream gave me the shivers. This scream scared the life out of me. Like I said, I stopped cold. I did not take another step. I heard that scream and I froze. Because it wasn't a normal scream. It wasn't a scream from a person in help. It wasn't a scream from a person who was running from something. It was a scream of pure agony and pain. And at the start of this podcast, or about 15 minutes ago, I spoke about withdrawals, right? And I don't know if you know anything about drugs. But when a person, as far as I know, goes through withdrawals, depending on the drug, it can be the most painful thing in the world. Have you ever quit smoking? Or do you know anyone that's ever quit nicotine? It's not easy, right? You become irritable. You get physical and mental symptoms. Sometimes people go through withdrawals when they quit coffee. They get headaches. You might go through withdrawals if you stop taking prescription medication. If you stop drinking alcohol, maybe you start sweating more. That is withdrawals. But the thing about hard drugs, like hard drugs, I'm not talking weed, I'm not talking coffee, I'm not talking alcohol, I'm talking crack. I'm talking methamphetamine. I'm talking crystal. I'm talking like the shit you inject, like heroin. When you stop taking that shit, it physically hurts. And from everything I've read, from people I've spoken to, they say it feels like your bones are on fire. Your bones. Every single bone in your body is on fire. And that is the scream I heard. The scream I heard was coming from a person who felt all of that. And like I said, it was at that moment that my blood went cold. And I stopped. I composed myself. And I realized how fucking stupid I was. Because there I was, without telling a person where I was. where my phone wasn't really working in the morning with a person in crisis in the area. And I realized I made a mistake. And I made an even bigger mistake by following the footprints. I made a bigger mistake by letting curiosity get the better of me. And what killed the cat, ladies and gentlemen? Curiosity killed the cat. There's another idiom for you. So at this moment, I'm the cat, and my curiosity is getting me in trouble. So after hearing the scream, I stopped. And I heard another scream and another scream. And I took a step back. I took another step back. And then I turned. And I started walking back quickly, certainly a lot faster than the pace I had when I walked there. And I walked back up the hill, and I can hear the screams going for quite a while. I'm not going to lie, they were loud. I will never forget those screams. Because by God did I feel sorry for that guy. I get back to my friend's cabin, the lodge as we call it. So I walk back up the FSR. And we're sitting having coffee, and I tell them what I heard. And everyone is like, Ronan, you're a fucking idiot. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm an idiot, but guess what? Blah, blah, blah. I told him the story. Told him about the screams. Told him how scared I was. Not just for me, but for him. And like, what would happen if I had bumped into him? If I'd met that man at that moment when he was screaming. He's not in a right frame of mind. Frame of mind. He is not in the right frame of mind. He's not thinking straight. He doesn't have his head screwed on. He's not sober. Maybe he is sober, but he's not like in control, you might say. So what would have happened if I met that guy? I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it because it probably wouldn't have been good. I mean, I have seen people go through withdrawals and they can get very vicious very quickly. So anyways, about 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour passes. I'm sitting with my buddies, having coffee. We're just talking. And of course, we're all talking about this guy here because it's interesting. And then my friend who lives on top of the mountain gets a message from another person who was driving up the hill. And they sent the message with all capital letters. Holy shit, police standoff on the hill. Police standoff. S-T-A-N-D-O-F-F. That's a noun. A standoff. One word. So there was a police standoff on the hill. What's that? When a person is doing something bad, the police will come. And the police say, surrender. The police say, sit down. The police say, put your weapon down. And if you don't, you have a standoff. And the police will close off the area. And they will try to contain the situation. Well, that is what was happening here. So one of our buddies was driving up the road. And they met the gentleman. This was a short time after I was there. I was very fucking lucky that I did not meet the gentleman when I wasn't even in a car, when I didn't even tell anybody where I was going. And apparently, he had a huge knife with him. So the gun wasn't brought up. I don't know what was going on with the gun, but this guy was on the road with a hunting knife. Could have been 10 inches, who knows? But if you meet somebody on the road and they're carrying a knife, you do not want to engage with them. And so our friend called the 911 because this is an emergency. Police come rolling up the mountain as quick as they can, but like we said, when shit like this goes down in the mountains, you are by yourself. Thankfully, our friend was in the car, so they were safe, and they stopped well away from the man with the knife. And because they probably had a better car than us, they could have kept driving, or they could have gone back down the hill, no problem. Police arrive. They tell him to surrender. He doesn't. And so the standoff ensued. The standoff started. Thankfully, after about 15-20 minutes of talking, he dropped the knife and the police were able to arrest him and bring him to hospital. And hopefully get him the help that he needs. No matter what, no matter how long I live, I'll never forget that. Because that was a scary situation. That was one of the few times in my life where my blood actually ran cold. You know, I heard the scream, and it was no ordinary scream. It was just one that would stay with you forever. And I know people have been through a lot in life. I know people that have been in war zones. I know people that have seen some horrendous things. And when you see something horrendous, when you hear something horrendous, your blood will run cold. That's what we say. You know, something that stops you in your tracks. And I was very lucky that I did not meet the guy when I was out for a walk by myself. I'm very lucky that on the first time, like when I was driving up, that we did not have an issue. That thankfully his withdrawals hadn't kicked in yet, and that maybe he was thinking somewhat straight or somewhat normal. I was very, very lucky in that regard. But I learned a lot. You know, I learned that, don't be so curious all the time. I learned not to walk down an FSR by myself when there's a person going through withdrawals, which you think would be common sense, but like I said, curiosity got the better of me, which it shouldn't have, but it did. So yeah, that's my story, folks. That's my story of meeting a man in the mountains. Not a fun one, a scary one. Like, I look back on it now and yeah, it's entertaining, but at the time, oh boy, it was scary. My blood went cold. My blood ran cold. Okay. Oh my God, I've been talking for like 47 minutes. I'm so sorry that you had to listen to that. My name's Ronan. I'm an English teacher. I love teaching languages. I love learning languages. What else can I say? I don't have a website. I have an Instagram. I have a YouTube. Check them out. Little Seal English. I love the mountains. I don't know how to end this podcast, but thank you for listening. You should listen back and identify some phrases, some expressions, or some idioms that I used. And try to use them for your life. Try to make it relevant to your life. So like, can you think of a time when your blood went cold? Or maybe before this podcast or at the start, I asked you a question. Would you rather meet a man or a bear in the mountains? What's your answer now? Has your answer changed? What would you have done in my situation? Would my situation have been different if my wife wasn't there, if it was just me? I think it would have been, because I would have had to put the chains on the car myself, and I wouldn't have been able to talk to him at the same time. You know, I was very lucky that my wife was there, and she was able to take care of the chains whilst I took care of him or just tried to make sure nothing bad happened. So your job is to go back, listen over this, find some phrases, expressions, idioms, whatever it may be. And if you have any questions, let me know. Join my Telegram channel. Leave a comment below, whatever it may be. I would love to hear from you. My name's Ronan. I'm an English language instructor. I love the mountains. I love nature. I love helping people learn languages, and I want to help you. Thank you so much for listening. All right, it is 50 minutes of me rambling. I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.